Hello, my name is Alicia Rose. I am a writer. I write. Not on this channel apparently, but I write. Recently, I've been doing a classics challenge, which is basically I only read classics for a year. I started this technically in January, although the first book that I finished in January was not a classic. I have finished 2 more classics since the last video, which I haven't actually edited yet, so that's fun. I know exactly when I'll be doing that. One of those books is The Handy Dandy 1984 by George Orwell. The ending, wasn't expecting that, didn't notice a couple of things, and then I sort of just got confused at the end and wanted to be done, so I just sort of kept on skimming it. Let's just say that I would rate it 4 out of 5 stars. Like, it was good, but it wasn't like, oh my goodness, this is the best thing since sliced cheese, which I have read before. I've read books that are like absolutely amazing, blows my head for days. I think about it constantly. I think about the plot constantly. I think about the rectifications of the plot. I think about the characters, what the characters have gone through, and all of that. So this one wasn't that. I think at the beginning, I was very much intrigued with the propaganda that the book had. For example, the whole newspeak. So if you guys don't know, 1984 has this thing called newspeak, which is basically language that is modified to shorten your vocabulary, which is very interesting if you think about it. Because the government is the one who's controlling this newspeak, so you don't have words like love or hate or, I don't know, starstruck. You don't have those kind of words. You basically have work and non-work. It's not lazy or hardworking, it's just work and non-work. And so it becomes really interesting because those types of speech that newspeak encounters actually makes it more difficult for people to have more free range of thought. So we can't necessarily understand our world around us, we just are limited to what our brains can think. Because if you think about it, if our vocabulary is acquired over time by listening to other people and reading books. If our books were censored, if our language was censored, if anything that we knew of was censored, we wouldn't be able to have that free range thought. We wouldn't be able to understand the world around us as we know of right now. And so censorship is actually a pretty big theme in 1984, but it's also a very interesting theme because of what it presents. Most of what I thought about it had to do with real world consequences. 1984, the plot, not very interesting. I just dropped that book. Sorry, George Orwell, I just dropped your book. He's dead, he won't mind. But, and plus I wore out the spine pretty well, so the plot is not actually that interesting. Winston Smith isn't a very interesting character, besides the fact that he has this free-range thought, and for most of the book he speaks in our English, and then towards the end he starts speaking in Newspeak. That's the only thing that's really interesting about Winston Smith. Winston Smith is a really weird guy. That's basically it. There are basically 3 characters that you need to know in the whole entire book, which I think was a very big theme for books like this, because in my next video I'll talk about a book that only has 3 characters as well. So the first character is Winston Smith, like I was talking about. Not a very interesting character whatsoever. Basically, he's like, I don't like the government. I know the government is wrong, but I'm still gonna do things anyways. And, spoiler alert, we find out at the end that Winston Smith has actually sort of been manipulated for 7 years. So, like, who can even say, like, whether Winston Smith is actually Winston Smith, or if he's just a figure of our imagination, which he's a character in a book, so of course he is. Not very interesting. The only thing interesting about, yeah, this is a very plot-driven book. It's not very character-driven. I mean, yeah, sure, it's character-driven in some points, like Winston has to agree to have an affair with Julia, which we'll get into Julia later, or else, like, the plot doesn't move forward. even if Winston didn't have an affair with Julia, he would still be having this movement towards trying to go against the government. Winston Smith. Now, Julia doesn't have a last name. She's just Julia. We first meet her in a hate rally. Now, hate rallies are these things where people come together and they basically hate all their enemies. But it's a really great way of the government keeping track of their citizens because it implants in their memories, this is somebody we hate. So they hate the war, they hate who they're fighting against in the war, they hate these rebels, which I don't actually believe exist. It's just this hate rally. So Julia is first seen in this hate rally. Winston is obviously attracted to her physically. And then later on she says, I love you, even though she technically does not mean I love you, but after a while she does mean I love you. But we find out that Julia has actually been going against the government since she was 16, and she's about like young 20s in this book. By the way, Winston's like 40, so that's a whole thing within itself. Julia tends to be a little bit more sexual. She doesn't care really about the government. She doesn't really care about what the government does. She knows it's wrong, but she's like, I don't really care. I'm just gonna do what I do and I'm gonna just do it under the radar, and that's basically it. But she's been doing that since she was 16, doesn't really care any other way, and that's basically it. Okay, next character includes a spoiler warning because O'Brien really does have a lot to do with this book. So, we first see O'Brien in the hate rally also. Winston looks over and he sees this little spark in O'Brien's eye that basically he's like, maybe he's on my side. So then we get really more in depth in O'Brien, and O'Brien turns out to be one of these secret spies for the rebel group, and Winston and Julia are like, heck yeah, let's join it. And then he turns out to be, a part of the government, and he tortures Winston. So the way that O'Brien is described in this book is almost romantic because Winston says that O'Brien knows him perfectly. Winston says that his book is for O'Brien. O'Brien tends to say this towards Winston as well. He's like, I know you perfectly. I know this. I know your feelings. I've been watching you for 7 years. I've been doing this and this and this. And basically, the whole entire O'Brien torturing Winston is just O'Brien being like, yeah, I know what you're thinking. Yeah, I know what you're gonna do. Yeah, I know what is going on in your thoughts. I've been a part of those thoughts for 7 years. And it just becomes really, really creepy. O'Brien is a very terrible person, and I don't like him. I did used to like him. Although something did feel off about him. He didn't seem like a human being, now that I think about it. He seemed very much robotic in a way, which is very, very interesting. Because when we first meet him in his own home for the first time, he does seem very open and welcoming and warm. Towards the end of that scene, we also come to realize, O'Brien doesn't seem as warm as he seems. And so there are definitely hints in the book that suggest that O'Brien is not this mentor character that's going to help them on their way. He's definitely a villain in this book, but also is the government and Big Brother and the party and Oceana and all those other things. 1984, what can we get out of this? Basically, the characters mean nothing. The only thing that really makes 1984 truly great is the themes that go along with it, which are censorship, which is government taking over control, which is torturing and trying to assimilate minds into making sure that you follow government protocols. What's really interesting is government surveillance. That could possibly be happening in our world today. Technology knowing you better than ever. That is also happening today. There's a lot of things in 1984 that we can assimilate to today. We know the things in 1984. We can connect to the things in 1984. And while I would love to go into propaganda and all those things that implies, we just don't have the time. So, 1984. Is it a good book? Yes, it is. Is it a good book for the characters? No. Is it a good book for the plot? Sort of. Is it a good book to teach us about ourselves and our government and our society and how freedom really can be affected by the government and by censorship and by surveillance? Yes. In conclusion, 1984, it's definitely a classic because it teaches us a lot about our day. Should you read 1984? Yeah, I actually do think that you should read 1984. So go ahead, get yourself 1984 book and read it. Even though I did sort of spoil most of the book for you, you can still read it, you can still enjoy it, because there's a lot of things that I did not touch on and it would be absolutely amazing. Also, if you want to get extra credit, look up propaganda. Try to learn more about propaganda, because if you learn more about propaganda, you will definitely come to enjoy and appreciate this book a little bit more. In conclusion, which I've already said, thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, click the thumbs up. If you really do want to talk about propaganda in the comments, go ahead. I'll definitely answer you and have a good discussion with you. Also, subscribe to this channel because I will be talking about more classics. For example, in the next video, I'm going to be talking about The Invisible Man because I finished that one this morning. See you in the next video. Bye.